Welcome to Athletes and Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a centralized platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect within their affinity groups. And we provide various services to tap into financial, health, business, career. But more importantly, this podcast, it's all about the transition out of sports. It's so difficult today. A lot of athletes struggle with it. And so we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their journey into successful leadership in business and entrepreneurship. So excited today to have Matt Mieske on. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good, Rob. Good to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us today. And so Matt was a college baseball player at Western Michigan. He was then drafted by the San Diego Padres, and then ultimately played for Milwaukee, Chicago, Seattle, Houston, and Arizona. I think I got them all there, and had a successful career. And then when he was done playing, he got into the financial space as a financial planner, financial advisor. And today he has a very successful firm, Mieske Financial Services. So Matt, I always like to talk about, how did sports shape you growing up, leading up into college?
It was really a lifestyle for me. I remember at a very early age just always having a ball or a bat or glove, something in my hands. And in Michigan, we have 4 seasons, so I wasn't one of those that was playing travel baseball and never did anything else. I played every sport and never really had a lot of downtime. So that really shaped me from a very early age, being a part of team, playing different sports that require different skill sets. Really did it from earliest age that organized sports existed through college or through high school and into college and then professionally.
Now, did you dream about being a professional athlete? Was it a baseball player or was there another sport?
I think baseball was always my favorite from a very early age, probably 5. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. If I couldn't do that, I probably would have wanted to play hockey. That was my second favorite, although we didn't have the organized teams that they have today when you were younger, like we do and had in baseball. But if I couldn't play baseball, that would have been my second choice. And I think if I would have put the time into that I did in baseball, I would at least been able to play in the minor leagues. Whether I got to play in the NHL or not, I don't know. But knowing what I know now, I think I could have done that. But baseball was always my favorite.
Yeah, I agree. I always tell them this is I dreamed of being a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, talent wasn't there, so now I do podcasts. so uh, so let's talk about so once you're now you're playing college baseball, and a big part of I mentioned as far as this whole podcast is the education. Was there education at Western Michigan at the time on what's next once you're done playing?
I was fortunate because there were a few players that were older than me that got to the point where they were draftable type players, and I got to see them go through the process of playing a season, knowing that scouts were there watching what they were looking for, the kind of talent or level of talent that you needed to be looked at. No guarantees that you would get drafted, but it wasn't like I was the first one ever. There were some that went ahead of me, and that was very helpful for me to know what it took and just to put yourself in the pool of potentials and kind of give you a measure of what level of professionalism and competitiveness and discipline that it took to make yourself draftable. And that was something that I was driven to do. Thankfully, everything worked out, but it takes everything you got.
Yeah, no, understandable. And I guess the other thing too is that, and probably more so today, there might be more programs, but just schools trying to address that whole transition out of sports. And I mean, I think a lot of times we'll talk about maybe some of the sports that don't have as big of a professional presence, and so the athletes might not be as driven because they realize that there's going to be life after sports when they're done playing college ball. But have you seen any of that? Maybe anything like now, just kind of if you're tied into your alma mater at all?
Yeah, I think that I always felt like the education part of being in college was important. Knowing that athletes get hurt and you could have all the talent in the world and have dreams and be pursuing those, and then something happens and you can't do it anymore. And so I was never of the mindset that that part of the equation didn't matter. I always felt like I have to have an education so that when I'm done playing, I've got something to do. I have a skill set that is marketable and I can make a living and support myself. So it was always a two-pronged thing that I approached, and that was important to me. I was a 3-time academic All-American, so I wasn't shying away from what needed to be done in the classroom. And it really helped me. I know maybe you want to talk about transition out of the game, but it prepared me for what was coming later in life.
Yeah, and that's great. And I think that's what a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of athletes miss out on that, especially the ones that are geared into just, nose into the sport and just really, full tilt. I mean, there's a lot of time demands and just not necessarily having the time to do internships and other things like that. I mean, I was talking to one on a previous podcast, and he had said he played football in college, and he just said that he really wishes that there would have been a mandatory like workshop for 4 weeks or a class that they had to take that would prepare them for life after sports, because it's such a dramatic, depending whether you're fortunate enough like yourself to play professionally or if it's done after college.
Yeah, it's a transition, and I think when you put all of your focus and energy and commitment into doing something, and you have to do that if you want to play professionally, and then when it doesn't work out, how do you shift that focus and energy and determination into something else when you have no idea what that something else is going to be? And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And from a planning standpoint, I think it's always good to have multiple options. I had people when I was growing up that spoke to that to me, always saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If this doesn't work out, then you have to have, plan B and plan C if possible. Some people don't do that. They go all in on whatever it is, and there's nothing to fall back on. And I saw older people when I was in junior high and high school that had stuff happen to them and didn't have that. And then I saw them struggle, and I learned a lot. Don't make note to self. Don't do that when time comes.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Great advice there from Matt, because I think you do have to have that plan and just understand that, at some point it's going to come to end. Again, if you're fortunate enough to play professionally, but still you have to know that, you're not. I think what we see a lot of with this is just athletes identifying themselves as their sport and not as the person. And so a lot of it comes up in conversations that, look, you got, could be 30, 40, however many years in the career after you're done playing, whatever level you get to, and you just need to understand that. So let's talk about networking, connecting. Obviously important to us at Alumni Direct and what we're doing, but talk about the importance of doing that while you're still playing.
Even more important now, I think, is making contacts with groups of people, either where you live or where you play. Some guys live in the same cities that they play in. It's interesting because you go through, I think you go through periods where when you have a young family where you want to try and protect them from the public and have some sort of privacy with your life. But at the same time, now with social media, it's really hard to maintain that because everybody knows everything at the moment it happens. So the privacy thing is kind of out the window, and what you're preparing for after is, are you going to be part of a community somewhere? Where are you going to work? And the real life is waiting for when you get done. Nobody plays forever. And the more that you think about that while you are playing in your career and develop those relationships, a lot of times that happens in the off season because you don't have enough time during the season. You don't have that free time, and it takes all your energy to focus on what you're doing. But building those networks and those relationships in the off season while you're still under contract, I think are really important. And you get an idea of what kinds of things you enjoy doing and what you probably wouldn't want to do when you're done, or what kind of people that you want to be around. So I think it's invaluable investing time and energy in building those friendships and developing that circle of friends, and that network that helps you transition.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, I even talk about, I think you can go back almost like even to high school, because a lot of kids had a conversation with a couple current college athletes, and I did talk about networking, connecting, and they said, man, I really wish I would have learned that. They hadn't learned it yet, just because in high school, I mean, think about all your friends and then their parents and the coaches and all that. I mean, there's people that want to help out there, and I think if like Matt's saying now, is you're building this network, especially while you're playing. I remember one agent was telling me that that's one of the biggest failures of athletes is that they're so zoned in that they don't do that while they're relevant, and then they're done, and then all of a sudden like, okay, well, hand me my six-figure job, and people say not so much because they just haven't built those connections that they could have along the way, like you're talking about. I mean, even I've talked to some other players too, just even with teammates and all that, just work talking together about things that they might do when they're done.
Yeah, and a lot of ex players, doesn't matter what sport, consider coaching or staying in the game, broadcasting, uh, scouting, front office type stuff. Some guys are cut out for that, and some people aren't. And those opportunities, there's not usually a lot of openings, and it's a matter of, is it a good fit? Are you going to be traveling a lot? You're going to be around your family or not? And the compensation for those jobs has gotten better over time.
First,
For a lot of years, the scouting and the direct player directors and the coaching staffs, they weren't paid really well. So those were jobs that got filled a lot of times by guys that couldn't find anything else. So they reluctantly took a low-paying job in one of those organizations, and just to get the insurance or whatever. But it's gotten better in the last 10 years, probably 15. But it's not for everybody,
right.
It's a tough lifestyle, especially if you had a long career. And
bring it back. So
yep.
let's switch topics and talk a little bit about alumni engagement. So, and I'm going to cover a couple areas with you on this. So let's start from a college perspective. When you were at Western Michigan, did the school bring back alumni? And I don't mean just for like the golf tournaments and the homecoming, but more so to work, with the current athletes. And then like part two of that question would be, do they reach out today, like to folks like yourself?
I think when I was at Western Michigan, they didn't do that a whole lot while I was there. I think they realized after I was out and playing in the minors, somewhere in that time frame, that they needed to do a better job of connecting players with people on the outside, and from an educational standpoint, from a alumni pride standpoint, from a fundraising standpoint. I think when the university started trying to raise money for the football program and add on to the stadium, and kind of at that point in the time frame of the Mid-American Conference, which Western Michigan is in, a lot of the schools were trying to expand their program. So it kind of happened backwards, because they're trying to raise money, and then they realize we really haven't nurtured a kind of alumni body, current players, former players, where we can really go to them and ask them for support. So they were kind of, to me, a little behind the curve in some ways with that, but now they do a really good job of it. So I didn't really see it when I was there. I realized the importance of that, being out of that environment. Would it have helped me a little bit if I had access or exposure to some of that stuff while I was still in college? Absolutely. It took me 10 or 15 or 20 years to learn some of that stuff on my own.
Right.
And it would have been good to know that when I was 20 instead of 40.
Yeah, and I think that's that's what we're trying to do at Alumni Direct, is just bring that together. I think alumni want to help, and it's a two-way street. I mean, the school has to ask the alumni needs to wants to come want to come back too. But I think it's definitely there, and they can help, and it really, I think, across all sports. So let's kind of segue that kind of the same question and talk about a little bit from a professional standpoint, like the alumni for Major League Baseball or minor league baseball. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I've noticed since I retired from baseball, seeing I think it's really been driven by failure, sadly, but seeing players in multiple sports go bankrupt that had huge contracts, blow through a lot of money, didn't have the skill set or training or opportunity to learn how to manage stuff, what to avoid, that kind of thing, to the point now where I think pretty much every professional sport, the main four anyway, have developed these programs for rookies to help them assimilate into the sport. How do you budget your time and your money and your relationships? Who do you surround yourself with? And then on the back end, when someone's towards the end of their career, having these different networks available to look at what career options are available when you're done. I know Major League Baseball Players Alumni has done a lot since I've been a part of it. It's been 24 years now. Every year they add some element. It's all driven by not wanting anyone to struggle or suffer unnecessarily. And is it a perfect structure? No. But the fact is that when I retired, there wasn't a lot of those kind of resources. And now there is. So it's taken 20 plus years to put certain things in place. Some are, organized by the alumni groups of the sports. Others are private organizations that either pair up with the current existing network of people or things. But they're always trying to add a specialty or someone who has a lot of knowledge on a particular topic, like a travel agent, that helps former players schedule vacations and things like that, job fairs, career advice. So there's all kinds of things out there. But the whole idea is to help people who have played transition into real life. And there's 100% of them that have to do it.
There you go. That's the truth right there. So let's I always have a couple of fun questions that I like to ask, and I've even narrowing the gap a little bit. So first question I have for you is, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to freshman Matt?
College freshman?
Yeah, college freshman Matt.
Define what you're trying to accomplish.
I like that. And just to put in perspective for Matt, and like some of our other podcast guests, I ask that question and they'll go into like, some will go into like a long statement of great advice, but so thank you for summing it up quickly. So I guess you showed me that we can do that in a shorter amount. So now same thing. What about senior?
A senior college player. Evaluate your options carefully.
Those are two strong statements. Everybody out there, you definitely got to pencil those in. Those are great, Matt. Thank you on those. So let's talk about transition. So you've gone through multiple transitions in a sense, but let's talk about the transition from going from college to minor league baseball.
Well, I always told people that where I grew up in Michigan and being in a cold weather climate where your season is compressed into weeks, not months, really helped prepare me for some of the mental challenges that professional sports can bring. And I think being under those conditions where everything was hard prepared me to handle slumps and trials and things that inevitably come up. And it kind of developed a mental toughness that was necessary in being successful. And I saw in a very quick manner when I got drafted and went to the first rookie season in Spokane, players from all over the country, some high school, mostly college, junior college. But everybody from different places were wired a little differently. Sometimes that was directly reflecting on their work habits or their discipline or lack thereof, or their toughness, And I just think where I grew up and what I was used to as a youth and then into high school and college, it prepared me for what I was going to face. You still got to produce, but I think when you have a bad game or a tough spell, it doesn't ruin you. You don't fall apart or collapse. You just keep showing up every day, and you can't you can't teach that to somebody. You have to go through it. You have to experience it. I think having a support group around you, having a solid family, people that care about you, obviously that helps. Not everybody comes from that kind of situation. So I was fortunate from that standpoint too. But a lot of it, I think, is learned. I learned a lot just by watching other people. You're all of a sudden thrown into a pool where everybody's talented. Some guys might do one thing better than the other, but you do something better than they do. But everybody's there for a reason. What are you going to do to separate yourself from the herd? And it's not always physical. It can be mental. It can be consistency. It can be steadiness. So there's a lot of traits, not all physical. Obviously, you have to have tools in any sport, but if you can make yourself better by incorporating what you see someone else doing that they do very well, why not do that? Why not? But I look at players today that are playing, and I get frustrated when I see them not making adjustments and not seemingly not caring about making adjustments. I think there's entirely too many strikeouts in the game today, and I don't see guys really caring too much about it. That's just one example, but you can't get a hit if you don't put it in play. And if you're not doing whatever you can to make that happen, my question is, why not? It's not just, one or two people. This is league wide. The league average, I think, from the year that I retired to today, the major league average, so that's all hitters that qualify for the batting title, I think it's 25 points lower today than it was the last year that I played. 25. And
Pitching, I mean, with all the pitching lines and all that too, it's got to be might be a little
a
more.
little, but not as much as everybody thinks. There was a recent podcast or video clip that I saw. Will Clark, who played for the Giants, was a really good hitter. He was commenting on the same phenomenon that we see, and they made mention that currently there's only 3 hitters in the National League that are hitting 300 or more. 3.
Yeah, that's bad.
And he was like, the pitching is not that much better. Everybody's swinging for home runs. Every swing.
Right.
Doesn't matter. And if you watch games, it's obvious.
Yeah.
And so the better question is, why has that happened? Why has that happened? Is it the payroll and salaries that are driving that? Is it the analytics that have been pushed in the last 15 years or since Moneyball? What was that, 2009? Yeah, 15 years. Nothing against analytics, but it's not the end all. I think we're missing so many different nuances that have been kind of kicked to the curb that are important. And I think that the teams that are the best or the most competitive are the ones that have found a way to blend old school and new school stuff and maximize performance. And you can't go one way or the other. And it's just interesting that adjustments aren't being made as much as you would think. And for a lot of guys that played during my era, it bothers us tremendously. And I'm sure the guys that played before us, it bothers them, the ones that are still alive, even more, because they were even more, old school.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about transitioning from being a professional athlete out to the real world, so to speak. Talk a little bit about that and give a couple words of advice to athletes that are getting ready to face out again, whether regardless of being done from college, being from an injury, or professionally?
I'm always thinking of what did all that time that I put into trying to play a sport professionally, and then all the hours that I practiced and honed my craft to play. What did that prepare me for? What kinds of things did I learn, not only about myself, but about being parts of teams? Those skills travel. They travel well. And no matter what you do, you have the makeup of being a good employee or good worker, good husband, a good father. The hard part for a lot of people is separating the sport. You mentioned it, separating the sport from the person. And I think one thing that happens to a lot of people when they're trying to transition into something else, they get frustrated, they get discouraged, and they get depressed. And there's a progression. And something has to click in someone's mind so that they don't start going down that road. And there's nobody who has played professionally that didn't have confidence at some point in their ability to do what they do. You do something for thousands of hours in your life, you should be good at it, and you should be confident that you can accomplish whatever. And I don't care, what profession or what vocation that is. And you can't forget that you have that ability. What changes is how people perceive you, because you might be up on this pedestal and then the game's gone. So people aren't going to look at you maybe in the same way that they used to, but you're the same person. Nothing's changed. Your perception of what people think of you, and that line that you need to cross over into the real world is hard for a lot of people. And if you don't have an education, which a lot of guys forego that because they want to push their career faster, and that's what you're up against. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but you have to be realistic that it's going to be harder for you to start out in that process than someone who has gone through, finished their degree, has some knowledge or a cognitive ability to do whatever that will take years to catch up to that person. So I think being confident in what you've accomplished and who you are as a person, and not letting society define you is very important. And take time to evaluate what your opportunities are. It helps when you start before you retire, because it's a hard thing no matter what. But if you don't think about it at all, and then all of a sudden one day, okay, I'm done. Now what am I going to do? It doesn't happen quickly. Sometimes it takes a long time, and there's a handful of guys that have never figured it out, and they just go through the rest of their life, sadly, struggling. And that's where, what you're doing and what you're trying to do, from a networking and transition and helping people go through that process. It's awesome because people need it, and not everybody lands on their feet the first time. And it's nice when someone gets plugged into the real world and thrives and has something more to offer than whatever they were known for when they were younger, and they could run and throw and hit. So that's I could talk for hours on this, but I think the other really big thing is never stop learning. I learn something every day with the people that I work for or work with. Knowledge is important. Wisdom is even more important. We deal with so much information on a daily basis because of technology, and people have a hard time retiring from their jobs many times because they can't turn that off. You train yourself to do whatever you do, and you have to take in and process way more information than any time ever in the history of man. And you have to evaluate things and analyze it and make decisions quickly, process a lot of information, retain a lot of information, and your brain is trained to do that for years. And then all of a sudden, I don't have to do that anymore. A lot of people struggle when they don't have something to get up for in the morning and do. And, that's another transition into final retirement that I help a lot of people go through in my job now. And I'm learning nothing that I was trained on or read, 25, 30 years ago as I was preparing for this career. Nothing prepared me for what people go through now. It's all new. So you got to continue to learn, and you can't stop because you'll get passed by quickly.
Let's give you the perfect segue. So, let's talk about kind of talk about your business now, and what you're doing to help athletes and others.
Well, I was fortunate growing up. Sorry, I was always good at math. Numbers were easy for me. I mean, I can't cook a lick or do certain things like that, but math was always easy to me. So I got my degree in accounting. Didn't know if I wanted to be an accountant, but I figured that was a flexible uh, vocation that would be the foundation for a lot of different things. So gave me opportunities and flexibility, but that prepared me for this job, which there's a lot of that analytical thinking and math and figuring stuff out like that. Yeah, I think that was the basis of starting out in this. And I've learned over time that it's a people business, helping people accomplish their goals, define those, figure out how to reach them in a world and an economy and in a marketplace that is challenging, fast paced, risky, sometimes impossible to figure out. But I know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be and doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. That's I think how I'm wired and how God made me, how I think. And it's a stressful job, just like baseball. My wife always teases me that you've never had an easy job. And I said, well, you're right. But I don't think I would be good with a job that wasn't easy, or was easy.
You
I
like the
just,
challenge.
yeah. And someday I won't be able to do that, but that's, I've taken that. And like I said, I continue to learn. I mean, when I started, I think I would define myself as very objective and pretty insensitive, black and white. But I've learned that to help people, you have to be a good listener and you have to be sensitive to how people feel, what they're afraid of, what their challenges are. And like I said, I learn every day. And what I learned from one person helps me a lot of times with the next one. And that makes it a job that's different every day. It's not boring. And it does take a lot of times everything you have to be good at it. So I think my professional career, my college career, growing up playing sports and just learning how to work, how to think, how to be committed to something, and all of those things have been helpful and shaping me who I am and helping me do the job that I have now. I mean, I've been blessed to work with a lot of people in a lot of different situations, and there isn't anybody that I don't feel like I couldn't help or couldn't be comfortable working with. It doesn't always work out. People sometimes choose to go different directions, but my life experiences um, have really helped me be very open to meeting people wherever they're at.
And you bring a lot to the table for sure. So, how do people find you, and then how do they reach out to you and to your business, Mieske Financial Services?
Yeah, my website is mattmieske.com, and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not on any other social media. Uh, and people might say, well, why? And when you're in the financial services industry, being on social media is a lot more challenging than being not in our industry. And there's a lot of rules, and I have a lot of opinions on things that are kind of strong. And if I was on social media, it might cause problems with my employer and the industry. So I just choose only to be on LinkedIn from a business professional standpoint. Nothing against any of the other things. It's just if people understood all the rules and technicalities of being on social media when you have a securities license, then they don't understand. But
Yeah, I've got friends in that space, and they're always talking about that. They just got to be real careful, like you said, all the rules and regulations. So,
yeah,
well, this has been great. You can find us at alumnidirect.com. You can follow the podcast on all across all the networks, as well as follow us our YouTube channel for Alumni Direct. And it's great. Each week we have so much great advice like Matt gave today. And just I think it's a real issue today, and we really want to make a positive impact in helping athletes out. So, Matt, thanks again so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
my pleasure, Rob. Thank you.
You're welcome.